What is happening, people? Frank here. We've got the Lincoln that came into the garage, no check engine light and a rough idle. We're going to take it out for a drive to get a feel and find out what's going on with the Lincoln. So right out of the gate, guys, when I'm driving this Lincoln, I'm actually pretty impressed. It's not stalling. Probably drove it a few miles here. And you know, that's not uncommon, people. You guys can have a rough idle intermittently. It could be phantom. It could take days for it to act up. So I'm actually gonna pull over here and pop the hood. All right, well, guess what? This thing just stalled. It's actually recording. You can hear the hunting idle. It's going up and down. That gives me more clues, and you can see we're just stalled out right here. Let's get back out in the hood and see what we got. After starting it up, you can hear the idle sort of start rolling. It'll go up and down. And you know, again, guys, this may take a while. It may frustrate you. We're gonna take it back in the garage and dive in even deeper. Now, on most occasions, that check engine light will be on for most of your rough idles. In this case, this light was stored. This condition was stored. The person driving this vehicle didn't identify that that was a check engine light. First thing we're gonna do is hook up a scanner, go ahead and code pull, do a very basic code pull to see what we're dealing with. And sure enough, a system 2 lean PO 171, 174, which is the bank 1 and bank 2, the left and right side of the motors. So that's telling us, well, we're getting too much air. So that could be sucking air from a vacuum leak, or we may have a fuel pressure issue. So let's get under the hood and see what's going on. Now, with a 171 and a 174 fault, you need to make sure that the fuel pressure is good to go. In the case of this 3.0 Lincoln, fuel pressure is awesome. Next step is to check for a vacuum leak. Make sure all these vacuum lines are looking good and there aren't any holes or anything, or for that matter, you don't have any of them disattached from their sources. If you're lucky enough and you've got one disattached, you can easily reattach it, and that'll solve your vacuum leaks. On some occasions, you can actually hear the vacuum leak. It'll be a hissing sound, and you can narrow that down without a problem. In a lot of occasions, you're gonna actually have to smoke test the system. You've got a lot of plumbing in some of these systems that have a lot of vacuum lines and a lot of sources. So essentially, you're gonna use one of these diagnostic system leak detectors, essentially burning baby oil to introduce smoke in the system. I'll have the part number down in the comments section, or you can stop at your local parts store and get something a little less expensive, something like this easy intake system. Now, the whole idea is to introduce smoke into the system, and wherever that smoke is emanating from, that's going to be the source of the leak. So in this case here, we're going to disconnect our PCV source hose right off the intake with the engine off. Stick that guy in there. Make sure you've got a nice sealed connection, and we can see smoke emanating right from the back of the engine underneath this upper intake. Now, if you don't have a smoker readily available, you can actually use some old school carb choke cleaner, or use it in an aerosol pressurized sprayer. Now, the thing is, you've got to be really careful. Start it up, because this stuff is very, very flammable. But what you can do is actually spray around various areas of these vacuum lines. Don't forget to get your brake booster. Be very careful of the exhaust. And as you're spraying, you're looking to see if you get any fluctuations in the idle. And again, you want to be very careful, because this stuff is super flammable. And if you've got a fluctuation in idle, that is the source area where you've got that vacuum leak. So knowing that we've got a leak right underneath this intake where that smoke was revealed, we're going to pull the intake and dive in closer to see exactly what is leaking. All right, so that's where that PCV lives. Once you've got that lower intake pulled out, there is the PCV. And what happens is that rubber hard plastic elbow, if you will start to collapse over time. All right, we got that breather assembly out that attaches to that PCV unit, which bolts down on the top of the block. And you can see here, this is where it's collapsed. And over time, that rubber actually caved in on itself and created this little hole, sucking air. That's your vacuum leak. That's your PO 171 and 174, and you're rolling idle. While you're in there, it is really key to replace all those other related plastic and rubber components that are attached to this. Now, what can you do to prevent that? Well, there's not much. Over time, this particular vehicle has about 118,000 miles on it. That oil vapor, remember that PCV is positive crankcase ventilation. It's circulating that vapor, and that oil vapor is going to cause that rubber to collapse over time. So remember, if you're in there after all that labor, do what it takes to do the job right. Check the workshop manual. If you guys have any questions, get down in the comment section. Hey, and for all my fellow mechanics out there, hey, if I missed anything, you guys know I welcome the comments, so get them down into the comment section. As always, I appreciate you guys visiting this edition of Inside the Garage.